So as I breathe in into this moment, I acknowledge that there is one life force, an unlimited, eternal, all-powerful presence. It is a divine consciousness, the one mind and the one body that is life. And because it is all there is, creating everything from itself, I know that it is good, that it is supporting, and that it is perfect and purposeful in all that it is creating, all that it is being. And because it is all there is, I know that it is living me, creating me in each moment. And I know that this is the truth for all are one in this one body, this one life. And so as I realize this oneness, I know that all of the experiences of my life have been this spirit, this presence living and creating those experiences. That all that I have, all that I have been, all that I have experienced are within this one life, this one presence that is good, whole, and perfect, and purposeful. And so as I recognize my own beingness in it, I release the attachment to the past, the attachment to the feelings, knowing that I have been changing and growing throughout this experience of life. And throughout, I have been supported, growing, expanding, so that I can experience the oneness, the presence, the freedom that it is giving me in each and every moment. And for this, I am so grateful. And with this, I give myself love from this one that is love. I give myself compassion and forgive myself for believing false stories about me. And because I can do this for myself, I expand this out into the world, loving and holding compassion and grace for all. For all are on this journey of oneness, of discovering who they really are. One with spirit, one life, whole and complete. I'm so grateful for this, so grateful for this truth, for this oneness and knowing all is well right now. And so I release this with great gratitude into that presence that is already creating it, already being it, being me and all there is. And I simply release this and claim it as I say, and so it is.
Here. So this whole year we're working with a theme of a grand rising. Now, how many of you, does that sound good for you? You have to have rise up and be more? Yes? Yeah. Do you know what that takes? Change. What? Digging deep. It takes change. It takes being filled with helium, right? It takes change. So this whole month we're looking at the idea of the unstatus quo, which is not doing it the way we normally do it, having change, opening to change in our lives. And so uh, today we're looking at the idea of Trauma 101, as the talk title is called. We're looking at our taboo topics this month, and trauma in a religious science center is one of those kind of topics that we don't like to talk about, right? Uh-huh. Yep, we don't like to talk about it. That silence said everything. Old school religious scientists might ask in the presence of somebody who's experienced trauma, well, what in your consciousness created that? Or they might say, well, just let it go. Both of which just create more trauma, shame, self-blame, feeling wrong, all that stuff. You know, in reality, have you noticed the planet we're living on? And I don't mean just this little, 6-month segment of time. I mean the whole of human existence. Have you noticed the planet we're living on? Right? Pretty much everyone is dealing with trauma, anxiety, and grief just by being here. Take a breath. Look at your neighbor and say, I am, and I bet you are too. Yeah. So take a breath and let's just acknowledge that. We're all going through that. We all have those experiences. Religious science is intended as one of the many paths to help us heal our wounding. But first, as last week's song reminded us, we have to feel it in order to heal it. Feel it in order to heal it. We can't just deny, pretend, sweep it away, or as today's song said, put it on the highest shelf and pretend it's not there. Sweep it underneath the intellect's carpet or keeping everything in order. We have to face it. We have to face it so we can grow, triumphing over it and becoming more. That's why we get to do this practice. So when we talk about trauma, what do we mean? The American Psychological Association defines trauma as an emotional response to a terrible event like an accident, crime, natural disaster, physical or emotional abuse, neglect, experiencing or witnessing violence, death of a loved one, war, and more. Immediately after, breathe. Immediately after the event, shock and denial are typical. Longer-term reactions include unpredictable emotions, flashbacks, strained relationships, and even physical symptoms like headaches or nausea. Again, take a breath. Two things are important in healing from trauma. The first one is patience. And I'm simplifying when I say two things, but the first one is patience. Give your feelings time to express. Give yourself time to experience the feelings. We live in a culture that wants to instantly fix everything, right? Just deal with it. Anything uncomfortable is judged as wrong, but our feelings aren't wrong and don't need to be instantly fixed or even healed. They don't need to be let's just pray that away and pretend it didn't happen. Having strong feelings following a traumatic event is not only normal, it's healthy. It's a sign that we're recognizing that something happened that isn't in alignment with the highest of life. Yes? Okay. It says, if I'm not traumatized by something that's really awful like that, there's a component missing within me. It's our psyche's first step in returning to healthy. The second step is that after a time, to begin healing, to not just stay stuck in the feeling, but to start to do something to begin the healing process. Not to judge our feelings as wrong, but to return to our natural, healthy state of an open-hearted relationship with life. That is how if you watch young children before they get into all the stuff of life, they have an open-hearted relationship with life. I just had my 8-year-old grandson here as for part of this past week. And to watch his joy of life and just experiencing it. And there was one point where we were on Susan Strobel's boat, and he was working himself up into jumping into the water off of the boat, while it was still, by the way. Um, and just watching that experiencing life, just doing life. That's us. That's our true self, if you will. So we want to return to that natural, healthy state of an open-hearted relationship with life. Our five-step affirmative prayer process helps us with that, but it comes also with taking actions that support our restoration to health. It's not enough to just go, I'm just going to pray and then everything will be fixed. That's not it. We have to take some action. We have a saying that says treat, which is treatment is what we call our affirmative prayer process, treat and move your feet. So it takes not just sitting on your prayer cushion, but it also takes getting out and doing something. And this usually involves reaching out to helpful people. And we live in a culture that says, no, especially for us guys, right? No, you got to fix it all yourself, figure it out by yourself. Reaching out for help is a sign of weakness and all that stuff. And yet it's not, because truly healing involves reaching out to helpful people. It involves telling our stories, not to stay stuck in them, but to share and be comforted in community. Barbara Holmes, who's an African-American mystic and theologian, in her book Crisis Contemplation says, when I allow myself to practice storytelling, I sense connections to others that I seldom notice. I hear the Black community's story and the stories of Jewish persecution and the attempts to destroy the cultures of Native people in the Americas. My memories are specific to the sacred stories of my village, but these stories also resonate with others who have endured similar circumstances. There's a future because the stories are not locked up within our individual lives. Instead, they are held as precious elements of communal wisdom. Anybody who's been in a 12-step program or a group therapy program who's started to share something that's happened to them, eventually, and hears other people sharing, suddenly has the feeling, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, this isn't just me. I remember when I was doing counseling in my very first marriage, and the therapist gave me a book to read. She gave both of us books to read. Mine was Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. I remember I opened up and started reading, and as I was reading the second page, and all of a sudden I heard this little voice go off in my brain that said, "You're not crazy." And I hadn't thought about that. I was like 34 at the time, and I hadn't thought about being crazy. But I spent a lot of my teenage years writing poetry about being crazy, feeling crazy, making suicide attempts, thinking about suicide, and all that stuff. And suddenly I read it and went, oh, it's the system itself, the family of nature itself. And suddenly having somebody else's stories that helped me to put things into perspective started to open up a door and started a healing process. So it's important to be able to tell our stories. And we don't seek a neat resolution or fixing by telling those stories. We simply share to be witnessed, to be heard, to be loved, and uplifted. And part of our role in our spiritual community is to compassionately listen, witness, and support each other, as well as experiencing that for ourselves. To experience each other hurts and all. There's no sign at the door that says only perfect people can walk in. Only people who have it all together can walk in. One of my minister friends said, churches and across all denominations are like hospitals. People come there when they're not feeling good. And so that's how it got me into a religious science church the first time was, my life was not working well. And, I finally had a friend said, you might want to try this church over here. So many of you have had a similar experience. And so to recognize that, and to recognize that we're here to love, support, witness, and hold each other. As Ram Dass said, we're here to walk each other home. One of the ways that I find helpful in dealing with traumatic events in my life, and I'm not saying this is how you should do it, I'm just going to share if that's okay. Okay, yeah. I'm just going to babble to myself for a while. Is to remember and embrace the idea that we are spiritual beings having spiritual experiences in human form. And this is significantly different than the more popular, and it goes like this: I'm a spiritual being having human experiences, right? It's different than that. So let's unpack this idea. We start by remembering that we are more than just the humanness, that we are in divinity in form. You and I are divinity individualized. Yes? And if you don't know that, you are anyway. We are more than our bodies. We are more than our thoughts. We're more than our experiences. We're more than our feelings. We are in the world, but we are not of the world. Some guy said that a while back. The first two steps of our prayer process begin with remembering that God or Spirit or whatever name you want to give it is all that there is, and then that I am one of that. It's a powerful reminder. It's a way of lifting ourselves out of getting stuck in just my stuff here, my human experience. It's a powerful reminder of who and what we really are and puts our human level experience into perspective. Take a breath and say it with me. I am a spiritual being. The next part of this idea, having spiritual experiences, again shifts our perspective. I'm not a helpless victim to the whims of a capricious life, nor is there a great God, big guy, big gal up in the sky or somewhere, or giving me lessons, punishing me, or giving me lessons in a cosmic curriculum, of which I'm just a victim. I just got to walk through it whether I want to or not. No. Can I say that again? No. I am, you are, we are, by our own deep soul choice, here to grow and expand as a spiritual being. In this form and in this place, to awaken more fully and more deeply to my own and everyone else's spiritual magnificence. That's why you and I are here, is to awaken to our spiritual magnificence and expand what we know of it. Yes? That is having spiritual experiences. And we can start to realize when we recognize that no, stuff isn't just happening to me, that there's something more that's going on. If I can frame this as I'm having a spiritual experience, I can start to ask the question, and what am I going to learn from this? How can I grow from this? Instead of just, oh God, I'm in the same relationship all over again. I'm stuck. What can I learn? By the way, all of your learning will not happen in this particular lifetime. Sorry? Unless you're really good. And then finally, in human form. I'm not here to spiritually bypass my human experience. I'm not here to sit on a cushion and go, la, 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 it's all good. That's not it. That's not the human experience. That isn't even the spiritual experience. We're here to be spiritual beings in form and to play with with skin suits on, yes? There's a phrase, there's a whole story behind this, but I like to use that, we are here to experience God with skin on it. Yes? Look around. God with skin on it. We got skin in the game. God's got skin in the game. So we're here to experience life in this form, to feel the pleasures and the pains, the joys and the sorrows, the traumas and the transcendence, which paradoxically coexist, all of it at the same time, and to learn and grow and awaken from and through those experiences. And guess what? It's not an easy path, have you noticed? It's not an easy path. Yeah? Can I get an amen? We have chosen deep growth in a time, place, and form that's rich in opportunities to grow. Breathe. We've chosen to be spiritual warriors, or as the Olympics are just happening, spiritual athletes. We've chosen to be here to challenge ourselves to be more. I've watched, some of you know I used to be a hardcore cyclist. I still love cycling. I'm watching some of the cycling events there. And there's countries that have one representative, and They don't cut it. They actually drop out of the race because they can't even stay up with the main pack. But they're at the Olympics. That alone is a significant accomplishment. There were two sisters from Afghanistan who had to leave Afghanistan just to be athletes because the Taliban wouldn't let them be. Because, by gosh, they're women. They shouldn't do that. All you uppity women, Yay, uppity woman. So when stuff happens, feel your feelings. Notice it. Take the time to truly experience what is going on and what you're feeling. Feel it deeply, while at the same time, in a little corner of your mind, you remember, I'm a spiritual being. That I'm more than this, and that whatever this is, it too shall pass. It always has, yes? So stay in compassion for yourself, and as you're able to do so, stay in compassion for the other who may be helping you have this experience. Got that? Oh, yeah. Remembering that no matter what it looks like, there isn't really an other. And that you will, as you work through it, become greater through this process, even if it doesn't feel like it now. Even if my friend Susan Kibbe, where are you, Susan? Back there, has this lovely phrase called another AFOG, which she mentions as another fabulous opportunity for growth. I heard it with another effing opportunity for growth, which to me is oftentimes more like it. But even if it feels like that, to move through it, to recognize I'm becoming greater through this process. Most of us by now have had enough experiences in life to notice that if we give it some time, if we move down the road from that experience a little bit, we can look back and say, I learned something from that. I grew from that. When I was going through the collapse of my second marriage, it was painful. There was a night that I remember I drove out from that house, and we were living in Roseburg, and I just drove angry. It's one of the few times in my life I've driven angry. And I was out, and I drove by a landfill, and I heard a little voice in my mind say, you should just drive in there and throw yourself on that landfill pile because that's where you deserve to be. That's how low it was. Didn't feel good. Anybody have kind of low experiences? Yeah. Today I look back and I say I go so much stronger from that experience because I came out of it. I eventually called up a couple of my prayer partners up in Seattle and said, I need to remember who I am. Help me please remember who I am. I reached out for some support, which is powerful to do when you're going through trauma. Reach out for support. Don't try to do it yourself. And we recognize, today I am grateful for that experience, the ending of that marriage, because I would not be here today doing what I'm doing, loving what I'm doing, loving the life I'm in, if I was still in that marriage. Yes? We've all had, the job that, oh my God, it's the end of the world when we're losing it. The singer who's abandoning us, how dares to want to have a life of her own, But we notice that down the road, we look back and say, well, A, thank God for that singer and the 10 years we had with her, and B, thank God for the growth we've had from that moving on. So you can look back at those traumatic experiences and you can ask yourself, what did I learn? How did I grow? That's what we're here to do. Oftentimes it feels like it's the end of the world, but at the time it's a gift. It's supporting the birth of a new, more free and more fulfilling life. Have you noticed going through that birth process, which we do over and over and over again, is not comfortable in the process. But the consequences, the alternatives, as the song said, are not acceptable. And so we see things, we get a perspective that we may not have even seen from our previous vantage point. The German philosopher Goethe said, so long as you haven't experienced this, to die and so to grow, You are only a troubled guest on the dark earth. We're here to experience that dying, that's the trauma, and the growth, which is what comes out of that. There's a lovely Buddhist phrase that says, no mud, no lotus. And so we're here to go through that, not to cling to it, not to hang on to it, but to allow ourselves to grow from it. This is spiritual growth and awakening, which comes from living with compassionate curiosity instead of closed down certainty and judgment. It's supposed to be this way, and if it's not, I'm unhappy. It's living like the farmer in the story where his horse escapes, and the townspeople all say, oh, how terrible. And his response, depending on which version of the story you hear, is maybe, maybe not, or we'll see. Or in my Zen, I was taught in Zen, judging, always judging, to remind us that the mind is always judging events instead of just noticing what's happening and being with it. When people experience trauma, they often do one of two things. They either deny it, bury it, and pretend it's fine. Fine stands for freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Or they wrap themselves up in it as their entire identity. I'm a victim and a survivor of this for 50 years. Make their whole life about it. The healthier ways of doing that are to feel it and then approach it with compassionate curiosity when you get to a point where you can do that. And ask, what can I learn here? And finally, as the new learning is revealed, to celebrate and be grateful for that newness, and then to be a support for others. So this week, 3 spiritual practices. Number 1, notice where there may be unhealed grief or trauma in your own life. Anybody besides me? Okay. You know what it is. I'm doing in a week, I'm doing a series of workshops at the CBEC conference, summer camp. And one of the chapters I'm working on from the book called The Lightmaker's Manifesto is called Bangs, Whispers, and Trinidadian Rum. The author was from Trinidad. I won't get into the rum part of it, but bangs are the explosions that happen in our life. Whispers are the little nudges that we hear, the little voice within that invites us to move forward. The bangs are the 2x4s on our head, as we call it. So notice where there may be that unhealed grief in our life. Approach it with compassionate curiosity, asking, what do you need from me? What is this thing that I've been holding on to, hiding from? What does it need from me? That's the first practice. Second one then is to get support and to be supportive. Don't go through this as the Lone Ranger. I got to figure it out all by myself. Get support, be supportive. Listen to others and let yourself be listened to. And then finally, the third practice is remember that you are a spiritual being having spiritual experiences in human form. Are you good to play with those practices this week? Maybe even beyond? I'm going to close with a poem from the African-American poet Maya Angelou. I've read this before a couple times. So long as you haven't experienced, wrong quote. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room? Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you think it awful hard? Because I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. That rising is the nature of spirit that is always present within each of us. It is always seeking to rise. Whatever trauma you have been through, whatever trauma you're in the midst of right now, feel it, experience it, and trust, I rise. We have an affirmation. You'll say this with me. With love and compassion for myself and all others, I rise into the light of my spiritual magnificence. One more time. With love and compassion for myself and all others, I rise into the light of my spiritual magnificence. So I do, and so it is.